So, in today's lesson, we are going to continue to look at how we can use unit rates to solve problems. So, we're going to be looking specifically at constant rate. So, your learning target for today is I can solve constant rate or constant speed problems by using unit rates. And the first problem that we're going to take a look at is your solve and share. And it says, suppose you are traveling by train to visit a friend who lives 275 miles away. The train travels at a constant speed of 55 miles per hour. How long will the trip take? Moving at the same speed, how long would it take the train to travel 385 miles? So we're looking for two things. So if the train travels at a constant rate of 55 miles per hour, how long will the trip take? That's the first thing that we're going to look for. So this right here, the how long the trip will take, that's going to tell me to find constant speed. And then from there, we're going to find the constant speed to see how long it'll take the train to travel 385 miles. And so I can use a distance to determine how long, I can use a table to determine how long it's going to take to do 385 miles. But the first thing I need to do is I need to find my unit rate. So I'm going to do 275 miles, and I'm going to divide that by 55 miles per hour. So this one's a little bit different because we already have our rate. We already know that our rate is going to be 55 miles per hour. And when I divide both 275, 275 by 55, because that's the value that I have, what that's going to leave me with is it's going to leave me with my hours. So miles cancel out, and I'm going to be left with hours. And so what I'm going to do is when I divide 275 by 55, I end up with 5 hours. And so another way that I can look at this is if I'm traveling 55 miles per hour, so 1 hour, I travel 55 miles. So I'm going to build my table. 2 hours, I'm going to travel 110 miles. 3 hours, it's going to be 165 miles. 4 hours, it's going to be 220 miles. 5 hours, it's going to be 275 miles. And then 6 hours is going to be 330 miles. And then if I extend the table and go to 7 hours, I end up with 385 miles per hour. So it would take 7 hours to travel 385 miles. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at your solve and share. So when we take a look at your look back, your look back says, suppose the train were traveling at a constant speed that is twice as fast as 55 miles per hour. How long would it take the train to go 275 miles? Explain. So now we've doubled our constant speed. So we are now going 110 miles per hour. What we're finding is how far we would go in 275 miles an hour. So if I double my speed, I'm actually going to half my time. So it was 5 hours at 55 miles per hour. If I double my speed, that means I'm going to cut my time in half. So it's going to be 2.5 hours at 110 miles per hour. All right, so let's go ahead and move into your next problem. To look at is on box A. The jet flies at a constant speed. If the jet continues to fly at the same rate, how far could the jet fly in 85 minutes? And so when we're looking at this, the constant speed, when we talk about constant speed is meaning the speed's going to stay over and it's going to stay continuously speed. A good way to think about this is that the car or train or jet is in cruise control and the speed stays the same over time. Okay. So the jet is going to fly 175 miles in 7 minutes. So they give us two ways that we can solve this problem. The first way is that we can use a table. So you'll notice the very first thing they did was they found the unit rate. And so to find the unit rate, what they ended up doing was you will take 175 miles and you will divide that by 7 minutes. And that's my rate right there. And so to get my minutes, my miles per minute, I'm going to divide by 7. And when I divide by 7, I end up with 25 miles per minute. So that's my constant rate. I'm going 25 miles per minute. And from there, so you'll notice this is this piece that we do, I'm going to find the equivalent rate. I get that by figuring out how far the jet's going to fly in 85 minutes. So I multiply 25 times 85 and I get 2,125 miles in 85 minutes. So I would take that 25 and multiply it by the number of minutes that I need. Here in the table, it's represented by increasing my values each time, or I just multiply to find that equivalent rate. All right. We take a look at the convince me. Would it be easier to use the table or unit rate to find how far the jet could fly in 75 minutes? Explain. And so it really is going to be a preference to you is what's going to be easier. I find for me that it's easier to find the unit rate and then create an equivalent rate. But if you use the table is just extending and adding on your miles and minutes until you hit 85 and then your distance of 2,125. Okay. So moving into your guided practice, I should see your guided practice problem solved when you turn your practices in. This is what you do with me. If you need to pause the video to finish the work, pause the video to finish the work, but I should see these 4 problems done on your independent practice. Okay, so number 1 says an ostrich runs 6 miles in 12 minutes at a constant speed. Explain how you could use unit rate to find how far the ostrich could run in 40 minutes. So if we take a look at this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the unit rate by doing 6 miles divided by 12 minutes. So here's my rate. So again, I make sure that I include the labels because I'm talking about rate language. And to get this in terms of miles per minute, I would divide both 6 and 12 by 12. And so my unit rate is going to be a half a mile per minute. And so then from there, I'm going to multiply 0.5 times 40 minutes. And I'm going to multiply 1 minute times 40 minutes. And when I do that, I end up with 40 minutes. And then a half times 40 is going to be 20 miles. So in 40 minutes, the ostrich is going to run 20 miles. And I do that by by finding the unit rate, by dividing miles per minute, and then I multiply that unit rate by the number of minutes, and I get 20 miles per 40 minutes. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. A baseball pitcher throws a fastball 60.5 feet in 2 seconds. If the ball travels at a constant speed per second, how could I write this as a unit rate? So again, I'm going to take 60.5 feet per 2 seconds, and I'm going to divide by 2 seconds. And when I divide by 2 seconds, that's going to tell me how far the ball is going to travel in 1 second. And so half of 60 and 20 or 60.5 feet is going to be 30 and 25 hundredths of a feet. So my unit rate is going to be 30 and 25 hundredths feet per second. All right. Take a look at number 3. So we're going to use unit rates to solve. A football player runs 80 yards in 25 seconds. If he maintains the same rate of speed, how far could he run in 60 seconds? So, the first thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and find that unit rate. So, I'm going to take 80 yards over 25 seconds. So, I'm writing out my rate and I'm going to find my unit rate by finding how much per second. So, to do that, I'm going to divide both parts of my rate by 25, and I end up with 1 per 1 second. 80 divided by 25 is going to be, let's see, I don't know. So let's go ahead and do the multiplication. So 25 goes into 80 3 times. That's 75. I'm going to subtract. I have 5 left over, put my decimal, add a 0. It's going to go in there 3.2. So it's 3.2 yards per 1 second. And then I take the 3.2 and I'm going to multiply that by 60 seconds. And when I multiply that by 60 seconds, so let me do 3.2 times 6D. Okay. So very first step that I'm going to end up with is 0 times 2 is going to be 0, 0 times 0. So I'm going to just put that 0 down. 6 times 2 is going to be 18. I regroup the 1. 6 times 3 is going to be 18 plus 1 is going to be 198. I have one value behind the decimal, so it's going to be 198 seconds, or sorry, 198 yards per 60 seconds. Okay. All right, take a look at the last problem. It says on a family vacation, Amy's dad drove the car at a constant speed, so the speed doesn't change. So he got to the speed he wanted and set that cruise control and traveled 585 miles in 13 hours. At this rate, how long would it have taken the family to travel 810 miles? What was the car's rate of speed? To find this, I am going to divide 80. I'm sorry, I totally was working on the last problem. I'm going to divide 585 by 13. And so I'm going to do 585 divided by 13. And then that will tell me how many miles per hour. So 13 is going to go into 58 4 times. That is going to be 52. I subtract, I have 6 left over. I bring down the 5. 13 is going to go into 65 5 times. That's 65. Subtract 0. So my unit rate is going to be 45 miles per hour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide 810 by 45, and that will tell me how many hours it will take the family to get there. So we look at how many times 45 goes into 810. So it's going to go into 81 one time. I get 45. I'm going to do some subtraction. 11 minus 5 is going to be 6. 7 is going to be 3. I bring down the 0, and then I look at how many times 45 is going to go into 360. It's going to go in there 8 times. That's 360. Subtract 0 left over. So it will take the family 18 hours. All righty. So your independent practice, you're going to do 5 and 6 on the front side. So you're going to be looking at using ratio reasoning to solve. And then when we take a look on your math practices and problem solving, I would like for you to go ahead and do 7. I would like for you to go ahead and do 8. I would like for you to do problem number 9. So you're going to do 7, 8, and 9. And then if we move down here, I'd like for you to go ahead and do problem number 12 as your last problem for there. So you're going to do 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12.